Hallo, willkommen zurück auf den Kanal. Ich bin Lang.
Wassalamu alaikum. Welcome back to the channel. I am a dog.
Today, we're going to talk about a phenomenon in linguistics in which the language which is being used changes in the middle of a sentence. Crazy, right? I would also like to tell you guys that since we haven't posted in a while, this video will be extra long to make it up to you guys. And lastly, I would like to announce that our next video will be a Q&A video. So we want you guys to ask us anything in the comments down below. It could be about linguistics, it could be about our YouTube channel, it could be about our goals, just anything. Make sure to leave a question down below. So thank you.
Yeah, that's right. Also, stay tuned until the end of the video to watch cool examples of code switching and see if you understand the entire sentence. That being said, let's get in, baby.
Alright, so in linguistics, code switching, also known as language alternation, occurs when a speaker alternates between two or more languages or language varieties in the context of a single conversation or situation.
Code switching is different from plurilingualism in that plurilingualism refers to the ability of an individual to use multiple languages, while code switching is the act of using multiple languages together. Multilinguals sometimes use elements of multiple languages when conversing with each other. Thus, code switching is the use of more than one linguistic variety in a manner consistent with the syntax and phonology of each variety in which they are speaking.
Code switching may happen between sentences, sentence fragments, words, or individual morphemes in the case of synthetic languages. However, some linguists do consider the borrowing of words or morphemes from another language to be different from other types of code switching.
Now, code switching can occur when there is a change in the environment in which one is speaking or in the context of speaking a different language or switching the verbiage to match that of the audience. There are many ways in which code switching can be employed, such as when speakers are unable to express themselves adequately in a single language or to single an attitude towards something. Several theories have been developed to explain the reasoning behind code switching from sociological and linguistic perspectives. However, also, I would like to add that code switching can also be implemented if you would like to emphasize something. If there's two speakers of a language and the general population can understand one of those languages a little bit better, you can speak in the language that you don't understand as well, but then to emphasize something that might be very important or useful, you'll speak in that first, more important language.
Use. The earliest known use of the term code switching in print was published in 1953 in a chapter by Roman Jacobson in Results Anthropologists and Linguists, written by C.F. Voegelin, T.A. Subak, and C. Levi-Strauss. He attributes the idea to linguist William Freeman Twaddle, inspired by communication engineers. In the 1950s, many scholars considered code switching to be a substandard use of language. Since the 1980s, however, most scholars have come to regard it as a normal, natural product of bilingual and multilingual use. So that means that from the 1980s, it's been considered to be something normal that people who have the ability to speak in various languages have the ability to.
In popular usage, the term code switching is frequently used to refer to switching among dialects, styles, or registers. This form of switching is practiced, for example, by speakers of African American Vernacular English, AAVE, going from a formal type of English to a less formal. Such shifts, when performed by public figures such as politicians, are sometimes criticized as signaling inauthenticity or insincerity, or only targeting one specific group of people. However, when we refer to dialects or even languages that would be considered less formal, that doesn't mean that they're less complex or more stupid. A lot of people have said that AAVE is, improper and that it should never be spoken, but that's just undermining the actual linguistic complexity and grammar that goes into AAVE, actually. It's a very complex dialect.
The term code switching is also used outside of the field of linguistics. Informally, code switching is sometimes used to refer to relatively stable informal mixtures of two languages, such as Spanglish, Taglish, or Hinglish. Some scholars of literature use the term to describe literary styles that include elements from more than one language, as in novels by Chinese American, Anglo Indian, or Latino writers.
As switching between languages is exceedingly common and takes many forms, we can recognize code switching more often as sentence alternation. A sentence may begin in one language and finish in another, or phrases from both languages may succeed each other in apparently random order. Such behavior can be only by postulating a range of linguistic or social factors, such as the following: speakers cannot express themselves adequately in one language, so they switch to another to work around the deficiency. This may trigger a speaker to continue in the other language for a while. Switching to a minority language is very common as a means of expressing solidarity with a social group. The language change signals to the listener that the speaker is from a certain background. If the listener responds with a similar switch, a degree of rapport is established. The switch between languages can signal the speaker's attitude towards the listener: friendly, irritated, distant, ironic. Monolinguals can communicate these effects to some extent by varying the level of formality of their speech. Bilinguals can do it by language switching, code switching. However, also monolinguals can basically code switch by, using certain idiomatic expressions. Like instead of saying when you're around a teacher, like, oh, did you do good on the test? You could say, oh, did you cook on the test? Did you cook or were you cooked, basically? And also, just when it comes to code switching between languages in general, at least with me personally, I think a lot of times what you'll do if you're pretty proficient in a language, but you want to make sure that your ideas get across to the other person, effectively and well, you'll say your sentence first in the language you're using, and then to make sure that they understand what you're saying, then you'll say what you've said quickly in another language.
Code switching involves the capacity of bilingual individuals to switch between different languages within a single conversation. John Guitariz highlights that it is important to note that code switching is most commonly observed among bilingual individuals who are highly skilled in both languages and is actually prevalent in numerous bilingual communities, contrary to common beliefs. The patterns of language switching exhibited by the speaker can be influenced by the listener's level of proficiency in the languages or their personal language preferences.
Types. Scholars use different names for various types of code switching. Intersentential switching occurs outside the sentence or the clause level, i.e., at sentence or clause boundaries. It is sometimes called extra-sentential switching. In Assyrian English, pardon my pronunciation, switching, one could say, Annie Wideli, what happened? Those I did them, what happened?
Intrasentential switching occurs within a sentence or a clause. In Spanish English switching, one would say, La onda is to fight y jambar. The latest fad is to fight and steal.
Tag switching is the switching of either a tag phrase or a word or both from one language to another. In Spanish English switching, one could say, Te gusta jugar fútbol, right? In this case, we are starting with a Spanish sentence and then we're using the phrase right, as in don't you or do you, in order to emphasize the sentence, but also replace what we could say in Spanish, because we're monolingual and we actually suck at Spanish. We suck ass at it. So,
Lastly, intra-word switching occurs within a word itself, such as at a morpheme boundary. For example, in Shona English switching, one could say, but madai sa ano aya handi si kumo no a. But these days, I don't see him much. Here, the English plural morpheme s appears alongside the Shona prefix ma, which also marks plurality. A portmanteau sentence is a particular type of intrasentential Code switching, it is a hybrid involving structures from two different languages in one sentence, in which an item in one language is used as a bridge between portions of the sentence in languages which have differing word order typologies. It is more of a syntactic blend than the kind of lexical blend one sees in Postmanol words such as smog.
Almeida Torribo's study aims to answer a fundamental question. How do second language learners acquire the necessary knowledge to maintain structural coherence and make well-formed judgments when using code-switched forms or sentences? The study reveals that there are two main beneficial aspects of code switching. Both developmental patterns contribute to assessing methodological linguistic constructs. Torribo offers an illustration of intersententional code switching, showcasing consistent grammatical patterns. Proficient bilingual individuals equipped with advanced proficiency in both languages engage in intra-sentential code alternations.
So, intersententional code switching versus insertional code switching. Intersententional code switching should be distinguished from the related linguistic phenomenon of insertional code switching. Toribio defines intersententional code switching as the practice of switching between two languages within a single sentence structure while adhering to grammatical rules. Skilled bilingual individuals who are competent in both languages can judge whether the acceptability of such code switching is grammatically and functionally correct.
Mm-mm. On the other hand, insertional code switching is often referred to as borrowing or tag switching. Toribo refers to insertional code switching when lexical terms from a secondary language are introduced into the primary language. These loanwords are partially or fully assimilated into the secondary language, conforming to its phonological and morphological structure. Insertional code switching serves a pragmatic purpose, acting as sentence enhancers or indicating the speaker's attitude towards the context of an utterance. Also, it can just change the grammar of a sentence as well. There is a phenomenon going on right now called English verbing, where you basically just verb something in your language. You put an ing on it to make it sound like English. So,
Examples of intersententional code switching. First one is Llegamos a los Estados Unidos en los 60. We came to New York in the 60s, which means we came to the United States in the 60s, and specifically, we came to New York in the 60s. Second sentence is Code switching among bilinguals ha sido la fuente de numerosas investigaciones, which means that code switching among bilinguals has been the source of numerous studies. Toribio also provides an instance of insertional code switching, which demonstrates the incorporation of specific lexical elements into a target language. The borrowed words can be integrated into the host language either partially or entirely, taking into account their phonological and morphological structure.
now here are some examples of insertional code switching. El estudiante está en el reference room. Notice how I used reference room at the very end. The student is in the reference room. A second example, I met up with my amigo at the fiesta. Yeah. I mean, it's pretty simple, but these are examples of code switching that you might do just all the time.
So now we're going to hop to neuroscience, specifically bilingual advantages that code switching has. So compared to their monolingual peers, bilingual children seem to have some advantage in non-linguistic tasks related to executive and attentional control. For instance, they are able to identify relevant visual information and ignore irrelevant perceptual information better than monolingual children. Bilinguals employ these executive and attentional processes daily, as they need to quickly be able to select the correct vocabulary and grammar in context. According to Anna Lee and Steve Marshall, People are also able to switch from their bi or multilingual identity to a strict monolingual identity whenever they are required to do so. According to a research study, bi or multilingual people's brains are working quicker than monolingual people's brains because they are constantly switching between different languages. When writing, bi or multilingual people tend to go through different stages of writing styles, essentially allowing them to go through the learning process in more depth compared to monolingual writers. Code switching is a writing tool that many people use in order to communicate with similar people whenever they are struggling with formulating words or ideas.
Bilingual disadvantage. Despite the advantages to code switching in the classroom, research has shown that bilingual children seem to have more of a disadvantage compared to their monolingual peers. For example, many of them are required to write or speak in English in American schools, rather than writing and speaking in their native languages. NLE and Steve Marshall state that many students are required to write or speak in English, causing them to push away their other known languages that make up a huge part of their identities. Oftentimes, children speak their native language at home whenever they are around their family, and then once they leave their homes, they speak in English. According to Barbara Melix, the switch in language causes a person to be careful and aware of their surroundings in order to know when it is acceptable to speak a certain language. On the contrary, whenever they feel comfortable around someone, they tend to code switch and speak in a mixture of two languages or more. The adaptation to standard English language can be quite difficult for bi/multilinguals and multilingual writers because they can feel unsupported or discouraged by the education system. So code switching occurs very naturally and is hard to control for those who are fluent in more than one language. And also another phenomenon that is really happening, I just think there's two types of people basically that come out of this effect of having to speak English in school. There's a type of person who will continue to speak the language, their own native language, at home and speak it with friends that they know. Or two, it's the type of person where they don't speak the language at all, but their parents do, and they respond in English. After learning French, there's a ton of French kids at my school, so I go up to them and I start speaking French. They can understand every single word I'm saying, but they're all talking back to me in English. And I realized that it's because they grew up hearing their parents speak French, but they went through school all in English. And so it's easier for them not to translate into French. It's just easier for them to respond because they can understand what I'm saying, which is very funny because you'd think it'd be the other way, but it isn't. And also, sadly, there are some people who are just growing up and they're just simply forgetting their own language, or the parents just don't see a necessity to teach their kids the language that they grew up with. I was in Mexico. I was living in Mexico, and there was this Hispanic parent bringing their kid around and, teaching them English, which is, a great thing. That's a cool thing, but would never give the kid an opportunity to also speak Spanish with the other Hispanic kids, and was just having the kid speak English. Whenever Spanish was needed in the conversation, the parent would just speak Spanish, which you can critique. I mean, it's not my place to critique parents at all because, I'm not a parent. But I think it's just very interesting to see how I can kind of, kill off or just replace native languages because of English.
During class writing activities, bi or multilingual students are oftentimes faced with writer's block because they are constantly thinking in more than one language, making it difficult to narrow down their ideas so that they can be expressed in a single language. It has been noted that English grammar is one of the most important yet most difficult topics in English, which even monolingual students struggle with. Code switching makes it very difficult to follow all of standard English grammar rules because students' brains are constantly wanting to switch from one language to another, making it harder for students to formulate good grammatical sentences. According to Barbara Mielix, bi or multilingual writers can oftentimes feel diminished or embarrassed whenever they are forced to solely stick to standard English, because they are afraid to be wrong and stand out in a negative way compared to their monolingual peers.
It is postulated that the language not in use is active during another language's use and can be primed by a conversation. That priming is what makes it difficult to pinpoint changes in activation within any given network. Based on various studies, it is shown that the immediate spoken context affects the likelihood of a code switch. Prior utterances can influence the activation of lexicosyntactic representations, making such representations more available for selection. The extended control process model states the following. I don't have the photo. Hold on, let me get it. Language control signals operate on a subcortical gate that acts as a constructor of utterance plans. The gate interacts with frontal regions to select a syntactic structure and binds rules in that structure to a specific lexical content. Plans are constructed in the planning layer of competition queuing CQ network. The competitive choice layer of this network allows serial order to emerge from the parallel activation of items in the plan. So, in conclusion,
The model hypothesizes that single language use and code switching use, two different types of language control, which is competitive control and cooperative control, respectively. In competitive language control, the quote unquote gate will only allow constructions from a single language to enter the plan. On the other hand, there are two forms of cooperative control. Coupled control, the matrix language temporarily cedes control to other language to allow intended insertion or alternation before control is returned back, and open control. Entry into the utterance planning mechanism is determined by whichever items from either language are most active at some moment in time.
goofy noise, bro. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video and make sure to subscribe to Langdog to get more of the best language content you will ever find in the multiverse. Also, for more goofy content, make sure to subscribe to Language Dog. But be careful, since if you learn about my ancient wisdom in my videos, you might become too smart for your own good.
Yeah, as Dog said, thank you so much for watching the video. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope you guys understood the full sentences, depending on the languages you speak, obviously. Remember to comment down below any questions that you may have for us regarding the channel, regarding our language goals, really whatever comes to mind. So yeah.
Salut. Digga.
Whatever you say, dog. Bye. Adios. Tschüss. Salut.